Hello, welcome to the Motorsport Review. I am your host, Perry Brown, and joining me this week is Keith Mewes. So thank you very much for joining me. How are you doing?
It's great to be with you, Perry. Yeah, really well. I've been enjoying the racing that we've had on because we haven't got our Formula One at the moment or IndyCar, so there is still some good racing going on.
There is a lot, yes. So we're just into February, which means that all of the other Formula One podcasts are just warming up, just starting to think about that F175 event coming up on the 18th. Meanwhile, we've already reviewed Formula E, the Mexico E-Prix. We then visited the deserts of Saudi Arabia for the Dakar, and this week over to Daytona. So yes, there's other things going on other than Lewis Hamilton showing up in Italy and crashing a company car. So as I say, we're here to review the Daytona 24, and this isn't typically a race or a series that I've watched before, but unironically, we'll get to that in a second. Unironically, it's also the reason that I'm doing this podcast. Some people will remember back to last year when someone said the question during one of the Formula One's breaks. They said, are people unironically watching IMSA bring back F1? God. And that brings us directly to why we're doing this, because as you said, Keith, there's so many other series out there, and we'd like to shine a light on them. And this was a hell of a race. This was a brilliant race. So first off, how much of it did you see, and how did you watch it?
I think I watched quite a lot, Perry. I had to grab a few hours in the early hours because my eyes were literally falling out. And I think at one point, I'm going to have to make a confession now. I think I dropped my iPad on the head because I was trying to hold it in bed. But yeah, so I tried to grab it because I do love an endurance race. I've been very lucky, been very privileged to go to Le Mans and watch our own series. But what I do love is the IMSA series because the racing is so sharp. If there's a penalty that needs to be issued, it's done and dusted, and we get on with racing. You know, we're not sitting there thinking, oh, how is this going to pan out? Will they give him a penalty? I just think, and I know you're probably going to touch on that later, but I just think it's a cracking series where we can go racing. And, you know, they're in and out. The pit stops are so fast, and it's not all about the drivers. This one is truly about the teamwork and about how every member is so key to that oiled cog, getting them in, getting them out, swapping over, changing wheels. They are drilled. These guys are drilled, and it's fantastic teamwork. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely come to those penalty decisions and how quick they were. Yeah, it was brilliant. Now, a confession time for myself. I don't really watch endurance racing, and that includes the Le Mans 24 hours. It's one of those ones, like I have said for the Dakar review as well, where for years I've been saying I really ought to sit down and watch that. And when I think of the 24 at the Daytona, I think of the old DPI years a few years back, and reading it in Autosport and seeing the headlines, like whoever has won, and seeing these cars, I'm thinking they look cool, but I only see them this one time, and then they go away again, and then they come back next year. And literally standing for Daytona prototype, I thought they just rolled them out for this one race. And it was always a bit of a, start the year, get this race out the way, and it was a bit of a money grab for the drivers. And it was typically Cadillac versus Acura, with Mazda stepping in as well. And then I did a bit of looking into it. The series struggled, was sort of failing, looking like it was going to go under, and luckily did this deal and set these regulations where they said, we want the teams that go racing at Le Mans to come and race with us. And so we've got these new era of cars, and yeah, absolutely brilliant. And sat down watching it and seeing these cars that are preparing, these teams as well that are preparing for Le Mans as early as now. That race obviously isn't until June. This was the early marker for them to go out and stake their claim.
You're absolutely right. And, seeing the GTP cars driving around and the LMP2s, there's just something special about that classification and the development and everything that learned during the Daytona. And a great thing about the Daytona is you do tend to get better weather than Le Mans. Nothing against Le Mans, but you're guaranteed that there's going to rain at some point. So they've got to get their wets out. But it's a great learning opportunity for the teams. And, actually keeping that series going, as you said, getting a system of rules in place so that they can race on both fields. It's just fantastic. And even though you're not an endurance racer yourself, as you said, you don't really, it is once you get involved, if you're not careful, it is extremely addictive. And you do find yourself sitting up at all hours of the morning thinking, where's my car? Where's my car? Where's my team? What are they doing? It's great fun, and it is good racing. It is solid racing. It really is.
I found that immediately. I was keen to watch the start and I was keen to watch the end. So started watching the start thinking I'll just sit down for an hour or two. And then I found myself at 1 a.m, about 5-6 hours into the race going, I really need to go to sleep now. And unfortunately, I couldn't really tune in until the end. So I sort of watched the 5-6 hours that started the race, then had to, go and do family things, go and have lunch. I know these terrible things that get in the way of motorsport. And came back and watched. Again, there was about 5.5 hours left when I tuned back in, and I thought I'll maybe watch an hour. I'll go away and I'll come back for the end. I was there. I was seated. I was watching, and I was just gripped. And that's what I think is the beauty of endurance race. As someone that was sort of sat down watching it for the first time, you maybe don't know the story of the race, which I'll come back onto, but you're just watching racing, and therefore it's enjoyable.
You're absolutely right. But they were driving in those, you say you tuned in 5 hours left to go. They were still racing as if they had just a few laps left to go. These guys, they put absolutely everything. And Paul Teresta, we're talking from a Brit driver point of view, whipping in laps like they were going out of fashion. They were beating, the best lap times. These guys had been driving for hours. Nutritionally, they were trying to keep it all going, hydration, grabbing a nap. But then they're getting in that driving seat, and 5 hours, 6 hours, 1 hour left. They're driving like they mean it. They are absolutely on it like they would be in any other race. It's just phenomenal racing.
The pace really was on it from the start. As I sat there watching it, thinking, "You got 24 hours to go, lads. Take it steady." And
no such meaning.
Oh my word! They just went straight in, just like, we're going wheel to wheel straight away because I want to win the first hour, and then the second hour and the third hour. The pace was relentless. And I noted it took about 10 minutes for the GTP cars to catch the GTTs at the back of the field. So 10 minutes in, and you're already zipping through and in between. And then traffic.
Flashing, it's get out of my way, I'm coming through. But it's really good to note that Nick Tandy set the fastest lap, and it was let me just quickly look at my notes. The lap 781 is when he stuck in a fast lap. I mean, 700 laps in, and someone says, "Oh, do you know what? I think I'll go for fastest lap."
Formula One fans will know exactly what that's like when normally Max Verstappen, hopefully not in 2025 so much, turns around and goes, "Do you know what? What's the fastest lap time? I'm gonna have that for myself." Vettel used to do it as well. I'm feeling bored. Let's just go turn in a fast lap towards the end of the race.
And of course, we used to see in Formula One cars retire if they have a puncture. Generally they'll get off the circuit. Whereas the 24-hour endurance cars, their attitude is, I've got to get back to pit lane. I've got to make this car get back because I don't want it recovered. And they're stripping off bodies, replacing engines. These guys they're just so focused on how many more laps, how far back are we, what laps can I make up? Yeah, I love it. As you can tell, the passion is there. I love it.
Well, for those that haven't heard you on the McLaren fans cast, then they'll be unaware of how passionate you are, but absolutely you're one of the most passionate motorsport enthusiasts. Hence why I had to get you on this podcast at some point as well. But let's just touch on go back to the rules a bit rather than the race, just to So again, you said you follow endurance racing, so one of the things I tried to do before the race was obviously learn about this sport, learn about the rules, what the cars were, and I have to be honest, it's a minefield. It's a complicated minefield of balance of performance. Now, for people that don't really know what balance of performance might be, it's the series way of regulating how the cars are level. So kind of like in Formula One, a team gets ahead, supposedly they rein them in over time. Not so much lately, they just seem to let them dominate a certain team, but we won't mention them. But yes, when a team suddenly gets slightly ahead in IMSA, they'll try and rein them in, they'll rein back their horsepower. The way they do that is incredibly complicated.
It is. You need a law degree to work it out, trust me.
It was something along the lines of they've all got 700 and something horsepower. Up to 40 of that can be electric, but it always adds up to the same thing. And if they save energy over a certain lap, they can regain it in horsepower. So for new fans, if you listen to this, you're a Formula One fan, and you listen to this hoping, do I get into it? Maybe give that a bit of time. Just watch and enjoy the racing is my honest verdict straight away.
Yeah.
Don't try and get too much into it. Just try and enjoy it straight off. But what it does allow is for different engines, because this is in part a turn up and you can put a Mewes chassis with a Cadillac engine, and that's where the heart of sports car racing really is. So I mean, just looking through the GTP engines, you've got a few V8s but twin turbos, naturally aspirated. You've got Acura with their twin turbo V6. You've got Aston Martin arriving at the next race. They weren't at Daytona, they weren't quite ready, but they're going to turn up with a 6.5 litre naturally aspirated V12 to add to the mix. It's like Formula One gone berserk. Just, you know, you can imagine Adrian Newey turning to this sport and going, I'm going to put he's already done this with the X2010 that he designed for Gran Turismo, and just said, I'm just going to put a twin turbo engine V6 into this, fan assisted. He'd have an absolute field day in IMSA, I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. But it is so well governed at the same point, though. So they've got these rules and these engines. But what's also great is the stewards are there. And this is nothing against Formula One or any of that, but those decisions are made instantly. If you're going to get a drive-through, you're going to get told you've just had a drive-through. So there's not a lot of time for the drivers to go, oh, what was it? They're in, they're out, they get it done, they serve it and back, and out they go. And I know, I mean, I follow the United Autosports team really closely. And the number 22 car was really starting to hurt my feelings. I'm just going to have to put it out there, because we had so many stop and goes in the last few laps. It's like we were making up spaces, drop back, make it up, drop back. But you can't argue. You're like, okay, yeah, done it. We got that. Let's serve it. Let's go. And that's what I like about the stewarding in this, for instance, with all the different engines that are going on as well, Perry. It's the way that they've said, yeah, you can race your engines, but these rules are going to be implanted and we're going to stick to them. We're not going to be messing. So if you get a drive through, you've got a drive through. You know, don't argue it, just do it. And then look at that later. And then stewarding comes in after the cars have gone into parc fermé. You know, they'll have a look at and scrutineer them, which kind of thinks a little bit better perhaps than waiting 5 or 6 laps to be told you've then got a penalty where you've missed that opportunity to serve it and get done. Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the key points I made watching the race. It's, you know, the commentators were very clear. We hear in Formula One, you get Martin and Crofty saying, oh, I think he's going to get this, and they've got difference of opinions, and then the stewards give a third answer that no one had considered, and we go, what? Oh, right, where did that come from? But here, the commentator's like, that's definitely a drive-through. That is 100% a drive-through. And then sure enough, it comes up on screen. It's not even investigated. It's just, that's a drive-through. And as I said, that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And if this series can do it with how many cars on track, like 64 cars or something on track, if not more, at the same time, if they can keep an eye on that many cars at once, why can't Formula One and FIA do that? Please. And they've only got a third of the cars on the track, a third of the amount of cars out there. You know, and we've got all those different classes within a class. You know, so those rules have got to be quite strict and stringent, because that's a lot of cars to marshal through. If you've got to put a safety car out, which they did on numerous occasions, but they even play the safety car rule right. There's none of this only letting so many people through. It's all done properly. And I like that you've got fair racing. Well, I'm not sure that people are going to argue that it wasn't always fair, that this team deserved that. But from a spectator's point of view, you know where you stand with your car. If you're watching your car, you go, oh, 10 seconds, oh, we better take that one, but it'll get back out there. And so we can get more involved as well. We can get there, but you do lose some of it during the sleepy hours, because you wake up and you think, what? Where's my car gone? Who's there? Who's got that? How have they got 5 laps in front of us, or 21 laps? And then you get a replay and you find that your car's had a complete engine rebuild, or almost that, you know what I'm saying? They've had to replace parts, and it's back out there catching up again, making up laps. It's 24 hours is a long time to race, you know, and anything can happen. It really is. Yeah. That was one of the criticism I had of it watching on YouTube, was that, as I said, I came back to the race sort of expecting, you know, there's a safety car. The safety cars take about 25 minutes ish from what I counted to shuffle the pack back to where they need to go green. And I thought during those 25 minutes, I mean, fair play to the commentators throughout the 24 hours. They fill the content brilliantly. At no point are they stalling or anything like that. But what I expected, and we kind of get this, I think, with IndyCar, where if there is these moments where they do like oh, this is the story of the race so far. Whereas I kind of, as I say, a bit of a criticism, I kind of felt like I had to go and onto the socials instead whilst the race was on, trying to find out what had happened, as you say, because you're not going to sit there and watch the 24 hours. So you've got to shuffle through and go, oh, there was a big multi-car crash in the middle of the night.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened with the United Autosports team. I was like, number 2 was doing really, really well. The 22 was doing fabulous. And it was like, where's it gone? And then, of course, I found out it had been involved in through no fault of its own, had been involved in quite a big incident. And that car had to be retired, which meant number 22 had to pick up the mantle and go, right, okay, team, let's do this. And all that energy was then put into the team, and off they went. So, yeah, you are right. It's a case of trawling through socials, having another a friend or someone else that supported. You can go, what happened? You was awake. What happened? Doing it in shifts almost.
So that's quite a good point, actually. So you've spoken a few times about United Autosport, who were competing in LMP2. So again, there's four classes. There's GTP, which are the fastest, LMP2, and they together make up the sort of prototype class. And then you've got the GTDs, the more like GT3 level racers, and they're split into pro and they're just GTDs. They're not so pros. And so you were following LMP2 and United Autosport. That's how you went about watching this race. Yeah,
because I love the GTPs and all that, but I do love the LMP cars as well. And the fact that there is a team that I really like watching. So that's my enthusiasm to, right, okay, team, where are we going? Using that hashtag, Be United. It's like, what are we doing, team? How are we going to get this moving forward? And they're just a great team for me to watch and enjoy. It's, it's partly across the pond. It's also a British-based team. So it's a great team to be following. It really is.
Yeah, I admittedly, again, looked at the lineup and not many teams jumped out at me. So I jumped onto Fred's and I said, who should I be following? And can I just say, anyone that got involved on that chat, thank you so much. The responses were brilliant. Not only was there a multiple, like more than 2, but also so many different people supporting so many different teams and drivers across different classes. That's the beauty of it. There's something for everyone, and a lot of love for Spike and Rexy, of course, the two AO racing cars, and a lot of love for Trackhouse Racing as well. So they got shown. So there was lots of people following teams, maybe just because of liveries, some people just following drivers. It was brilliant. Myself, I found, listen, with the Dakar as well, I found that I am secretly a Ford fan. I didn't know about.
So the Mustangs were out in force this weekend.
That is a good looking GT race car. I was watching that thinking, actually, so I was watching that, funny enough. But in GTP, I couldn't decide. I honestly, and that's again another beauty of it. I loved watching as a neutral. I can't watch Formula One as a neutral anymore. And I'm passionate about one particular team. I love following one team, but to find a new series and watch it as a neutral is just a brilliant perspective to have. So I tried to stay as neutral as I could in GTP and just enjoy the racing. Like
you're saying, I had a notepad beside me trying to make mental notes when I went to sleep, when I woke up, what had happened. Because in the GTD class, I love watching the Iron Dames. I absolutely love the fact that the girls are out there in that pink Porsche and they are taking it to the rest of them, and they race so hard. And I just think I've watched, the girls doing that, the Iron Dames racing for a long time now. And I just think it's a really another class outfit where these girls support each other. They help each other. If one stands down, one jumps back in. And they're just, as you said, I can look at so many multi-disciplines. And although I was following, United Autosports in their class, in the LMC2, so down in the GTDs, here I am thinking, come on, Iron Dames, come on, girls, you've got this, let's go.
Iron Dames got a lot of love on that, on the threads as well. So it's brilliant. It's brilliant to see, and more of that. Absolutely, they'll be back at Mons. They'll take on that series. So absolutely all for that, and the women taking it to the men, of course. And talking of women involved in Daytona, Jamie Chadwick.
And Jamie Chadwick was at, exactly. So
representing.
Isn't it just great though to have different class of drivers? Felix Rosenquist was out there from IndyCar. He was in a car. We had Paul di Resta. We had so many drivers that we know, but through different classes. So we were seeing, like, as you said, the Ford Mustangs were out there. We had the Corvettes, which just sound immense racing around there. And at the same time, they're pushing the Ferraris. You know, it's you can be a complete fan of all of just the racing, and it doesn't really matter what team wins. It's because it's just like, this is fantastic racing.
That's it. Yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. And as I said, because they're different classes, they've got different no there's no blue flags either, so they don't have to get out of the way, which we'll come back to in a second, I'm sure. Yes, slight foreshadowing. But yes, so early exchanges, we saw a very early retirement, unfortunately, for Lamborghini. Again, another team that people were out there watching and supporting. And I think they managed an hour perhaps, and then they were out. So not the best start for this project, but they'll be back. So
it's a learning curve for them. They got to watch the rest of the races, picking up where they maybe need to tweak. So yeah, it was still a great learning opportunity for the whole team. So
yeah, and as you say before as well, when a car has to go behind the wall, as they describe it over there, and it's very literally behind a wall. They go through the pit wall and then suddenly start driving through fans, not through fans. Oh my god, but through the paddock to the support where their tent might be. And you see this onboard of people having to get marshaled out of the way. So again, when we talk about Formula One, it's very closed off. If you get this idea that you're going to get a ticket and you're going to go and meet Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, afraid to say, probably isn't going to happen unless you've got some insider help. However, you go to IMSA and you want to be run over by a car, you go and stand by that wall, you will at some point have a car come through it at you and be marshaled out of the way.
And also the driver lineup the whole weekend is also round the fans as well, which is what I love. They haven't got the drivers. We've got the drivers on a pedestal. They don't put themselves up on one. So the fan engagement in these events is also fantastic, because throughout the weekend, there's opportunities before they start racing for fans to get close, get their photographs, get some autographs. And yeah, they're much more in touch with that side of the racing. It's fantastic to see it. Very similar to Le Mans as well, because we get that opportunity at Le Mans as well. So
I think as this podcast goes on and reviews more and more motorsport series, I think there's going to be a recurring theme. I think it's very much Formula One that sits alone in how closed off it might be. So stay tuned, more on that coming up. But yes, then I was quite surprised at how often pit stops occurred. Again, endurance racing, I was sort of thinking, they'll be like every couple of hours, and roughly 45 minutes to 50 minutes they were pitting in. And they're so quick though. And again, it took me a while to work out what the number was on the side that was going up from zero, near enough zero, up to 100. And again, this is all to do with the rules and energy, not fuel, but energy.
Energy, yeah. And you get to see that from the fan. You can be sitting in the stall, see it go past and thinking, it's only got 33% left. Oh my God. So it's coming in at any time soon. That's coming in fast. And it needs to do its energy store, maybe change just 2 tires, not 4, because the outside ones are working well, the inside ones are gripping. So many differences, that we don't see normally.
Yeah, strategy was a huge element. And we saw, again, because it's only 50 minutes, you can kind of see drivers do normally 2 stints. I think was pretty average. They come in, do a pit stop, go out, come back later, then they would do the driver change. And then suddenly, as I say, I watched for about 5 hours, and suddenly they went, right, they've now declared 5 hours in, you can use soft tires. And I went, what? They don't just swap tires, they suddenly got different compounds as well. And it's like, oh my God, there's just more elements to the strategy to suddenly pay attention to.
Yeah, and of course they're not using tire warmers, so when they do come out on the track, that first lap it's like driving on ice for a lot of them. And we saw a lot of spin-offs and a lot of people, because that out lap they've got to judge it right. They've got to get that pit window right to get themselves out into some clean air so they can have a warm-up lap to get those tires back to life. There's a lot of strategy, and for the drivers, there's a lot of thinking process going on throughout this race. So
I can imagine, especially at night time, it got very cold. So they've got these soft tires because they had to generate the grip. And I can imagine you've just been woken up and told you've got to go racing, get in the car. You don't know where it's at. You don't know where the car's at.
Nope.
You've put these fresh tires on that haven't yet seen the track. So you've got to warm them up. It's night. So you're trying to find your brake marker, and you get to the hairpin And the first thing you do is lock up and spin off and go, right, okay, that's how the next 2 hours is going. Brilliant.
I've got a flat spot and I'm going to know it now for 2 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, they're quite grateful, I think, when they do get a safety car and they can just relax for a little bit, take stock.
Yeah.
But on that, they close the pit lane, or at least stop them from coming in and doing a free pit stop. But did you know more about that than I did, when they were doing emergency pit stops, but no more?
Yeah, that's same as, they do if you're literally down on energy, you're allowed to come in, get an energy boost for a lap or two, and then you back out again. They do actually shut the pit, and it stops that kind of sneaky pit change. It stops that sneaky, putting some new tires on it. It really does level out the playing field. So if they are low on the energy base, and as you said, they have to come in and get a splash and a dash, because it's literally just to get back out there until they go green racing again. Then it's a flood into the pits for tire changes, driver changes, hydration. Again, though, it makes it interesting. It keeps it real, because you're looking at your energy levels thinking, are we actually going to get round this lap? Or are we going to be, is it going to ride off? And, it just makes it very exciting, Perry. It's a different class of racing. So if anybody's not really watched it, what I'd say to you, chuck yourself into it, have a go. Be kind to yourself. You might need some sandwiches and a flask, because it does get long old racing, but, it is trying to work out the rules, listen to the commentators, follow the racing, because it is just fun, and it's hard, and it's clean. As we said with yellow flag, it's clean racing. We're flashing the lights. Well, cleanish. Let's go. But we're coming through, lights flashing. We're coming through. Don't blue flag me. Let's get out of my way. I'm faster than you, and I'm having that part of the track, and causes issues. But when I say clean, I think more like the racing strategy is what I mean, like the rules. That's the cleanliness. You can't play dirty rules where you're going to quickly jump in and jump out ahead of everybody else and give yourself. But the racing is far from clean, eh?
Yes. Yeah, I think we ought to get to that. So towards the end, as I say, watching the last 5 hours, because I was like, okay, it will sort of shuffle out in the last couple of hours.
Yeah.
About 4 hours from the end, there was a safety car.
Yeah.
And as you say, some cars are thinking, this is perfect timing. I needed a safety car right now. And other teams are going, this is the worst moment. I've got no energy left now. I've got to shuffle to the back, and I've only got 4 hours of racing. Yeah. Then there was a safety car 2 hours from the end, and it's the same situation. So it was brilliant to watch that strategy play out. Obviously, at the start, when you've got 24 hours left, you just sort of go take it or lump it and go whatever. So it starts to, as the race draws closer and closer to the end, you suddenly see teams start to go, oh no, now I've got to do this, do that, and it's all about being on that lead lap. Yeah. But what we saw in GTD, as we've sort of alluded to, was this heated battle between BMW and Chevrolet. And as I said, no blue flags. You had a BMW not on the lead lap, and you had a Chevrolet leading the class, and you had a BMW not leading the class. Well, of course, BMW wanted to lead the race. And so a few not so clean tactics going on there. What did you think of it?
Yeah, well, there was part of me screaming, just get out of the way. You're not playing fair. Come on. Because he was making that car as wise as a car can ever be. But again, another thing I think we've got to remember, Perry, is yes, they're racing hard like that, and they can't take that sort of slightly further out line because they've got a brick wall in the way. They haven't got a runoff. They haven't got something. They've got a great big brick wall that's in the way that says if you get too close to that, you're going to snag that wall. And so that even makes it a little bit different to other racing because they haven't got the runoffs and everything else, etc. Because they're using that Daytona circuit, and there's, they've altered the track to get them in, get them out. But ultimately, there's a brick wall to the right hand side of you when you're racing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a bit of choice defending, but especially so when they went wheel to wheel and basically said you're going across the gravel. And do you know what it reminded me of? And I'm possibly showing my age a little bit here, but there was a race where I'm sure Schumacher was leading. Michael Schumacher was leading in the Ferrari. Ralph was second in his Williams, and Rubens Barrichello was third. And Michael gets a problem. And so as soon as Ralph comes up to go round him, he shuffles him wide and lets Barrichello through into the lead of the race. And that was exactly what it reminded me of. Formula One circa 2002, maybe 2001. And I thought, this is, I thought it was brilliant. I hate to say that because it wasn't the best racing, but it was brilliant at the same time just to see them go needle for needle at each other and who could come out on top.
Yeah, it is that, but you are right. There was a little bit of tactics coming. There's a lot of team orders going on, like block him, make it wide. We're coming up behind. Now make the space, give us a shot, and yeah, you can see that. And I know them from our point of view, from the team with United Autosports, what I was following. When we got that drive through, it was like, no, why would you do that to yourself? Come on, team, why did you let them do that? But as you say, they get that open window again, and off they go again, and out they come, and they come out fighting. I think that's the difference, because they've been racing for 23 hours, but they've got an hour left. Yeah. So let's still fight. We're still fighting. Those last few laps, they're still fighting for that position.
The Chevrolet came back out, and I think they realised at that point their race was gone and just wiped a BMW. I think that led to one of the last safety cars just went, do you know what? This is your revenge. And it was I didn't see the hand gesture that came out the window. You may have seen that on social media. I think he was saying, I'm number one, but I think possibly say.
It was either I'm number one or follow me this way. I'm not quite sure.
No, yeah, that was brilliant.
Of course, there would have been no swearing, would there? There would have been no swearing.
No, because they know that the FIA. Oh, that's right, it's not the FIA, so
they can swear away, can't they?
That's probably what it was. Excellent. So yeah, it was very close at the finish, all classes as well. Very close across them all. If you listen to the Dakar review, I converted the winning margin down into a 1 hour 40 race. Do you know what a Porsche winning by 1.335 seconds over 24 hours converts to in a Formula One race?
No, go on, do the maths. Come on.
I've done the maths. Over an hour 40, that would be a win of 900ths of a second. That's how close this race came to. In GTP, of course. I didn't do it across all the classes.
That's the difference between winning and coming second.
It's unreal how close this race was. Maybe it speaks volumes for how many safety cars there were, but I think across the board, everyone that made it to the end, sorry Lamborghini, were very close. It was phenomenal. It was right to the very end, as you say, and even Acura, who watching hadn't been that far off, but hadn't been that close either. And Porsche were seemingly comfortable 1-2 victory, and then this Acura starts to catch up, and then it gets second place, and I'm watching going, they're never going to steal the win off Porsche, are they? And they got within 1.335 seconds.
They got so close to that Porsche was there, that Penske Porsche. Everybody was thinking, oh, he's got this in the bag. And as you said, all of a sudden that Meyershanks racing car comes out of nowhere, and you're like, hang on a minute, when did he pull the switch?
Sonny went for it. Yeah, it was a brilliant finish. So yes, Porsche Penske number 7 won the race.
Yeah.
Felipe Nasr, Lawrence Van Thor, and Nick Tandy. I mentioned for Nick Tandy because he is now the first driver to have won all 4 of the big 24-hour races. So obviously there's Daytona, there's Nürburgring, Le Mans, and the Spa-Francorchamps 24 hours. So,
and he set a fastest lap on that 700 and something.
Yes. He completed 781 laps. So it's
mad, isn't it? It's fantastic. It is that, where did the Meyershank one come at? We know they're there. We know that Felix was in there. We know he can drive, but it kind of just very quietly after 24 hours went, hello, I'm here. And you was like, wow, we've split the Penske Porsches up. Here we go. Now this is going to be a fight now to the end. So
absolutely made you watch it, as I say, right to the bitter end, and you just felt from a couple of hours left to go, you're like, this is really heating up. So
it's really close now, because at one point the number 6 Penske one was out the front for a long time. And then number 7 came back in, and it was just very interesting to see how they were doing it.
Because the drivers are in there for themselves. Again, you might go, well, they're just going to formation fly to the finish. But you've got drivers like Nick Tandy who's going, come on, I want to win. I want to be the first person to win the 4 24-hour races. Come on, let me go. So they are very much French for themselves. LMP2 then. So you were very happy eventually on Wednesday night.
Yeah, so when I was sitting there on the Sunday after the race, going, second, we could have had first, but do you know what? We'll take second. I'll take that, as we lost to 22. Lost the number 2 car, and then to get promoted up, because later on it was found that there was something different with the other car, and all of a sudden we're in
excessive wear on the plank, I think it was, or the underside of the car.
Yeah, they did a lot of scrutiny, and so we were then promoted up, which also then took, it took the other teams up as well. It was a complete move up. So yeah, very happy.
They finished 11th eventually. But again, it just speaks for, because it wasn't like you're disqualified penalty.
No.
It was like a minute or something added to their time. And yes, there was late safety cars, but it dropped them from 1st to 11th place. Again, just a marker of how close the race was in every class.
Completely out of the points. It wasn't like it was literally down to last place in their class. So, which is for them that's harsh, because that 1 minute they're jubilation, they've done it, and the next minute they're like, we're actually last now. We carry no points into the rest of the season for this one. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And have to give the Rolex watches over as well. So if they've already set the time, I mean, that's a bit of a pain, isn't it?
Coming off eBay quickly, weren't they? They were thinking, right, I better take that one down quickly.
Yeah. So then we get to the GTD pros, and I was quite happy because the fortunate battle between Corvette and BMW allowed the multi-Mac Ford Motorsports to come through and win the race. The best looking cars. As I say, I'm a secret Ford fan, and whilst we're talking about Ford, in the last week they have announced that they are going to be entering the hypercar class at World Endurance Championship in 2027.
Fantastic. How good is that to see a Ford engined car back there where, as well, bringing it to the pinnacle of the racing as well. So fantastic. That's great news for race fans. It's another engine manufacturer back out. I mean, we grew up in the days of racing where Ford Cosworth, for instance, it was the engine at one point. Everybody wanted the Cosworth engine, but so to see Ford re-emerging and coming back out, and those Mustangs, they sound fantastic. Let's be totally honest. They look awesome. They look aggressive, and they sound just fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, look forward to that Ford coming back to World Endurance, and that's a number of manufacturers again turning their attention to World Endurance racing. So Formula One, look over your shoulder, perhaps.
Well, I'm hoping that. I'm hoping that Mr. Zach, Mr. Zach from our McLaren, I'm hoping that he's listening to this. And I know we've got the, United Autosports, but I'm thinking, GTP Pros, GTD, is there room for a McLaren in there? Could we get a 24-hour endurance team up and running? Are we going to mix it up with it? It would be fantastic to see it happen.
I've been seeing from that home sheet for about 4 to 6 years now. Like when we saw the McLaren Senna coming up, and I was like, that one there, even back to the P1. You're looking at that car going, give me a Le Mans version of that car right now. I need to see that at Le Mans.
So if you're anybody's listening from McLaren, please, give Perry and I a break. We need that car on the track.
World Endurance is the place to be. Don't leave Formula One because you're world champions.
Keep it going.
I don't think we mentioned it this podcast.
We're winning that one. We've got that one.
Oh dear, I feel really bad. I invited 2 McLaren fans on to talk about this, and Ray's not here to defend Ferrari, so she's going to be hating on me when she listens to this back.
Well, that Ray's got backing in my house because my wife is a Ferrari fan. So,
so in GTD, we've got the AWA Corvette as winning that race as well. So shout out to them for winning GTD, because it's much the same. Again, we talked about the different classes, but GTD Pro, all that separates them from GTD, they're racing one another, although they're separated by classes, is that level of driver. So again, something else to learn when they're saying, oh, such and such a driver is a gold level driver, such and such is silver, and such is bronze. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to go up against any of them. They're all gold to me, but who sits there and goes, oh, this person's this quick, is beyond me. But it's one of those ones where you go, I'm a bronze driver, and that could make me valuable to a team that wants to be in GTD, not GTD Pro. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, it's just another thing to keep an eye on.
Even driving, if you say only driving in a GDT, that's still a fantastic. But what a great place to cut your racing teeth as well, to get that knowledge and to get that endurance racing. You're putting in so many laps, banging them out. So your racecraft, of course, you're being able to really hone in those skills of racecraft, and you're going to take that to the next race, even if it's not an endurance race, even if it's a short race. You're going to take what you've learned. So for a lot of those drivers out there, it's a great platform to hone in those racecraft skills. It really is. So we've also got, thinking about that, we had the Corvette in there as well. We had the Corvettes and the Porsches really pushing each other, but also the Aston Martins were out there as well, which I think is fantastic, because with Aston Martin, Mercedes and BMW, there were so many out there. I'm just saying, Perry, isn't it great, to see the Corvettes, Porsches, Aston Martins, Mercedes, BMWs, all in the same class, all pushing each other. So we're seeing that variation of cars. There's not a dominant car. The Lamborghinis are in there as well. So we're seeing a difference of engines and a difference of cars. But they're so with it. They're there. They're fighting each other. They're taking it to each other. But it's great to see that many manufacturers out there racing.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, to see so many manufacturers involved, and as I say, that's growing. Aston Martin joining at the next round of the championship, which gets in second. Ford, as I say, have committed to the future. I'm sure there's other manufacturers have said they're at least interested. I know McLaren have been at meetings to like when World Endurance has been talking about the engines specs. McLaren have been present in those meetings, and I'm sure so were Aston Martin a few years ago, and now of course they are now joining that series. So it's gaining traction. From where I said, I started this by saying about the DPI era, which was only 4 years ago when the series was in serious strife. And had to find something to do, to where they are now. That's a short time to turn an entire series around like they have. So yeah, it's really good to see them, and all on a level playing field. There's no one turning around and going, do you know what? We're not happy with the current regulations. We can't compete, because this balance of performance is working really well. It's complicated for a new fan.
It's very complicated.
Come in expecting you're going to know it, but just enjoy the racing because it's so good.
It is. It's fantastic. It's phenomenal racing. It really is. And I think for a lot of drivers, Le Mans has always been, there's a lot of drivers, be it Formula One drivers, ex-Formula One drivers, touring car drivers, for instance. Le Mans holds a great big one. And with Daytona becoming so good as well, it's bringing those endurance races right to the forefront of new fans, new era of fans, because, we're seeing our favorite cars. I'm not going to lie. I've always, as a kid, since being a child, I've loved an Aston Martin. I just think on the road, they just look superb. And at Le Mans, you will see so many privateer Aston Martins out there racing away. And it's fantastic to see this. So, I hope this momentum keeps moving forward. And the endurance races get that fan engagement, because it is fantastic. It really is.
Absolutely, yeah. So talking of what's coming up in the series, so they were talking a lot about the California 36 hours. So the next race is at Sebring, the 12 hours at Sebring. So only half as long, but still a big challenge, and one of the big ones, of course.
And of course, because they've only got half the time, they're going to push just as hard as if they've got 20. They're going to really go for it, because they worked out their driver stint. So they're like, right, how far can I push this time? So
So I don't know if it's been resurfaced. I'm going to have to obviously look this up before, but Sebring typically is a very bumpy track. So again, it's a completely different beast to Daytona, which is oval, and then this track that I don't think gets used too much through the years, but it stayed fairly consistent. There was a change to the bus stop chicane this year that we haven't got into, but Sebring, very bumpy. That's one to watch. And obviously very Aston Martin joining with the Valkyrie AMR AMRLMH. It's not the name that rings off the bell. We'll just call it the Aston Martin Valkyrie.
It's coming out there. It's going to be there. So, and again, you think again about, we've got the road circuits, as you said. We've got the track 24-hour ones, almost just track, but then also we've got some of them that break into the road surface. It's they're on road racing as well. So Le Mans, very much it's out there. They're right out there. So it does bring a difference with setups. They have to really think about the cars, the tires. So they can't have the perfect setup. They are going to fight that car in some corners, and they're going to let it drift in other ones. They really are going to use that driver racecraft to bring that car to its peak. So love it. Absolutely love it.
That might be something that BMW look at, because there was a lot of hope for them going into this race. We haven't really spoken about them. Obviously, their Kevin Magnussen was again a big draw to their team, because he's just fresh out of Formula One. So a lot of people said, "Oh, we're following for him." And towards the end, they had a bit of a issue with their car. It seemed that the front suspension or front bodywork gave way. So again, you're thinking, this was at Daytona. It's pretty flat. It's not as bumpy here. Is it too soft? Is it that your car's not quite durable enough? So is that something that they're going to have to work on in the next 6 months before Le Mans? So Sebring again is going to be a big test for that car. And
all those changes we've made to the BMWs and the Mercedes, it's like, right, what's going to work? Is the AF Corsa going to be, is it going to be on track? Does it need to? So they're great testing grounds, as you said. They're great time for the team to hone their skills, think about what they've got to put on the car, what they've got to take off the car. I just absolutely think it brings racing alive. It really does.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, a lot to go through in 24 hours on that one. So I just love it. The fact that, as I say, started by saying we've in January already reviewed Formula E, which is sort of 45 minutes of racing. Went to Dakar, which was 2 weeks, and then 24 hours. Just such different disciplines. And as I'm very much Formula One, Formula E, Formula 3. You know, very standard sort of level of racing. To see these very different disciplines, it's been really eye-opening, and can't wait for where the rest of this podcast is going to go from here. But for now, I'm going to call it a night, I think, on this one. I need to get my sleep and get ready for my driving shift in the morning. So Keith, thank you very much for joining me tonight and talking all things Daytona. I'm sure we'll have you back on very soon.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a passion. If it was tractor racing, Perry, I'd be watching it. I can't lie, you know. So if it's racing, I'm going to be there.
And I can't say that we won't cover it. Do you know what I was even thinking? Like, why not? Because it's got motors. There's boat racing. You know, it's just so much out there. So I do need to sit down and actually sit and have a calendar ready of what is going on at what time. Absolutely. But yeah, it's been a great month already, and I'm sure there's more coming up, and we'll cover F175, what actually happens at F175. It's just going to be 10 liveries and 30 interviews, or if they're actually going to do something, and then the launches, the pre-season, and that's just Formula One. So yeah, there's a lot going on. So
and the carnival comes to town. So thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much. Yes, all the best. Thank you for listening to the Motorsport Review.